Bonjour. For my discussion post today, excuse me, I'm going to show how I plan on teaching French with a linguistic perspective, modeled on teaching sentence forms and the idea of students being language detectives, which requires them to analyze a text using what they have learned up to this point about French syntax and dividing the individual components of the sentence into some syntactic categories, and point out some different forms, which will ultimately yield written and spoken production. I would give students some time to go over the text and do the analysis on their own. After that time, we would discuss the text together, because some students are really good at this kind of thing and some students are not, so I wanted to have a blended approach to this topic. So, here is the text on the left in French, and this image is of course just because it's about likes and dislikes. So, on the right, I have questions or things to look for. I will ask my students to underline the subjects of these sentences, and this will be based on information that we had learned earlier in the year. Circle the conjugated verbs in the previous sentences. Highlight the nouns that are liked and disliked. What do you notice about each of the verbs that follow the conjugated verbs? What is the negative form in French? What is similar about the two forms, conjugations of aimer? What is different about the two forms, conjugations of aimer? And then the form that is in question here is how to say I like, I don't like, and we don't like. So, to demonstrate this, I did it in a different way by making a chart. And I'm not going to read all parts of this chart, but just the necessary parts that the students would need to notice. And what I'm going to ask them to do after this, they would need to know je means I, nous means we. They would need both of those to be able to talk about themselves and what they like to do with friends. Another importance here is the subject-verb agreement, knowing that the am is for je, amont is for nous. They share the am, but the morpheme for the conjugation for subject-verb agreement is here. One of the big things that students need to know in French is the importance of the determiner, the article in French for masculine and feminine. When you're talking about I like something in French, you need to always have the article. So you would have to say, like the first one, la poésie, that is poetry. In French, it's like saying I like the poetry. We don't say that in English. So that's an important thing that students sometimes don't do. So they need to see that and hear that as many times as possible so that they actually use that. Another very common error that I want students to see from their time being a language detective and just different contexts is seeing that when you have a second verb in the sentence, it is unconjugated or infinitive, no subject-verb agreement. So in verbs like jouer and manger, which are used in the text, it is not joue to match je, because am is already there. It's j'aime jouer, not j'aime joue. Works just like in English, but sometimes students conjugate the second verb anyway. The negative form, ne and pas, that's important for what they will need to do, and that's something that we would have already done prior to doing an activity like this. And then necessary forms that they'll need are j'aime, je n'aime pas, I like, I don't like, nous aimons, we like, and nous n'aimons pas, for we don't like. So after we go over that, to go further, I have a written task, a reading task, and a spoken task, because these are meaningful and communicative. So they have their written task, which is just for them, being able to talk about things that they like themselves, things that they don't like themselves, and what they like and dislike to do with friends. And just like I did in the example, they need to use nouns, making sure that they use the appropriate determiner, and the verbs, making sure that they have the first verb using subject-verb agreement and the second verb being in its infinitive. Once they're done with the writing task, they will have a reading task, and they will trade their writing with another person. They will then draw what the other person wrote in order to demonstrate the written and reading comprehension. And then the spoken task, which is the strongest of the two for the communicative purpose, is they will ask the questions from the writing to their partner, and their partner will be able to respond while paying attention to the form. So the previous three tasks apply what was learned in the sentence form language detective activity that I used at the beginning, which is connected to Dr. Susan Bridges' suggestion that we incorporate something that is meaningful and communicative instead of fill-ins or something else. Students get to write, draw for comprehension, and engage in a brief conversation with a partner about personal likes and dislikes using both verbs and nouns, alongside what they like and dislike to do with their friends using both verbs and nouns. Thank you guys very much. Have a good day.